Welcome back to Stu Structures. We're here with a simple build this time, and we're just going to knock this out. I have a bunch of these to use on my layout. It's a wash plot platform, so stay tuned and we'll show you how to do all this. So welcome back to Stu Structures. I am Mark Stewart, your favorite ferroequestrianologist. We're still not ready to talk about iron horses yet. Someday I hope to get into working with some of steam locomotives and stuff, where that title kind of comes from. But in any case, in this video, like I said in the intro, we're going to build a wash rack. There's a lot of small little type of structure deals that you can use around your layout that adds a lot of realism to your layout. And you'll see with a picture here in a minute, in Grafton where I'm modeling, they had a platform set up where they could wash steam locomotives between the roundhouse and the coaling tower. And they had several of these wash racks put in place, and I'm going to need about 9 of them to do this fairly prototypically. So I'm going to build one in this segment and show you the steps that I'm going through. I don't have plans for these, but I have a couple of pictures. So I'm going to build these and you can follow through the process. So here we go. The first thing we need to do is kind of get a size for all these. You can see these are sitting beside a locomotive here, and from that I can kind of judge the height of it. And blowing all these pictures up, I can kind of get a better idea of the details. So I just took the photographs and broke out segments of them and enlarged them, and got them big enough that I could kind of figure out at least the basic makeup of them. And since it's sitting next to this steam locomotive here, what I did to kind of get a better idea of scale on these was just to drag out a steam locomotive and a scale rule and figure out the height. And then once I have the height figured out, then I can come back and figure out the other dimensions from that. And basically what I did was just put together a drawing here of the actual size of what this is going to be. And what I'm going to do is use this as a template to put this whole thing together. Now you can see a lot of these on the original pictures kind of look like they're a lot more steel to it than wood. What I'm going to do is use styrene to replicate the steel, and use steel for all the X bracing and for the supports that support the deck itself, and then use timber or wood to do everything else on the structure. And once it's all painted black, that you won't really notice that much difference in it anyway. I think there might have been 1 or 2 more pieces on the original that was steel versus the wood that I'm using, but I think when it all comes together, it's all going to look good and replicate what I'm trying to make anyway, so I'm just going to roll with it at that point. But the first thing we're going to do is come back and look at this drawing, and I drew this exactly to scale so that I could use this to cut all my parts and glue them together and use it as a jig. And I come back in my wood box and go through it and find these 4 pieces here that are the proper size square to use for the uprights, and I'll lay them on that drawing because the bottoms and tops are cut at angles. They're not exactly a 90-degree cut. And this way I can cut all these members, and I know they have the right cuts on the tops and the bottoms. If I have to, I can come back and sand them later to correct it a little bit. But then I just drag out this drawing and measure everything on it and make sure they're all going to work. It's better to check everything twice than to glue everything together and find out something's just not quite right. Now for the wood supports that tie all these uprights together, I found this piece of basswood in my wood box as well, and I just come through with a ruler and cut strips. I didn't measure all these, I just eyeballed cutting a whole bunch of strips to cut these links to use for handrails. And I just ran them a little wild when I glued them on, because I'm just going to turn it upside down and cut them all exactly to length, and then they're perfectly flush with the outside of the uprights of these. So here's another picture of one that hasn't been cut off. But remember, one side has a top handrail and the other side is where the stairs come up onto the platform. Now I do have this extra piece of wood at the top that I'm going to have to trim, and I'll show that later on. But basically, here's just a bunch of styrene I-beams. Now I buy these in bulk from some supplier on eBay. They're a little softer plastic than evergreen, but they're a whole lot cheaper. And once I cut them to length using my drawing, this is how I have to trim the inside edges of those so that they'll set back in and glue onto the wood without protruding out too far. And then I just come back and add those to all the sides. And I'm making these 3 at a time, so here's a set of the first ends for all of the 3 that I'm building right now at this particular time. Like I said, I need 9 of these, so I'm just coming through and kind of doing them as a long process. But then I need to start gluing those together. So I lay down the long strips for the sides, then I set these ends on top of them once the little glue is put in place, and I use a weight to hold them in place and use a square to make sure everything's nice and square. And I just add these side members to the sides to create the square structure. Then I come back with the same type of I-beam styrene and add those onto the side as well. And that pretty much finishes the square structure itself. So then we need to start looking at all the X bracing, and I do have this evergreen strip styrene, and it's about the right scale size, so I'm going to use it to cut all these lengths for the X bracing. And I just lay these on the drawing once again. That way I know the angles on the tops and the bottom of these are right when I go to put them in place and glue them into place. Now I can trim them a little later on if I need to, but I just come back and glue the X bracing onto all 4 sides, and that's the basic structure of the wash rack altogether. Now the next thing we need to do is start looking at putting the decking on. Now in the middle of this, I'm putting an extra brace across the I-beams to give it a little more support. And also where the square poles are in the corner, I want to add some little wooden pieces to those so that I have a place to glue the wood to. And this is just a homemade little gluing tool that I showed once in my earlier videos, and I use it to just put tiny amounts of glue down in those little areas when I'm gluing that together, so I don't have excessive glue. Now here's just another thick piece of basswood, and I drag it out to cut strips to make the decking out of. Now the decking I want to be just a little thinner than the handrails were, and once again I'm not measuring this, I probably should, but I just come through with a ruler and cut it as thin as I possibly can cut it. I don't have really a strip cutter, so I'm just using a ruler and X-Acto knife, and then once I get the strips cut, I just come back and cut enough of these to do the decking on one of the tops and cut them all to length. So I have the decking boards here to start gluing into place now. And you can see here the 3 frames that I have together. I have the decking boards on the top of one of them. I'm just going to go on and continue to manufacture these. I have 9 of these to make in all, but this is the beginning of the process. So there you have at least the wooden platform part of the wash rack. There's other stuff in this immediate area that I need to include, and we don't have the plumbing on these for the hoses and the water and the valves and all that stuff yet. So I'm going to have one more video in this series to finish this out. There's also ground level hoses with little stands and valves and stuff on them too. I don't know if you noticed those in the photograph. The more I look at this photograph, the more I see little stuff in there that would help make this scene a lot more plausible in the long run. So I'm going to work on all that. But anyway, in the next video of this series, we'll look at getting all the plumbing done so we can get water up there to wash the locomotives. It makes no sense to have a wash rack there if you don't have all the plumbing to go with it. So we're going to continue on with that. This is a delicate structure. Most of my structures I can pick up and handle pretty well and not worry about damaging too much other than a small part maybe that I might knock off. But these are not something that you want to have around where your cat's going to lay on them or something like that, because they are fairly delicate. So anyway, some things just are. You could make it entirely out of plastic and use some serious glues on them. It would make them a little more durable. I like the way the wood looks. The basic structure of the originals were wood, and you know, it tends to, the paints, everything you do to them, it still looks more like wood if it's wood than plastic. The plastic's great for replicating steel parts. But when it comes to wood, nothing looks more like wood than wood. So in any case, I want to thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me and watching my videos. Like and subscribe to the channel. I kind of put all kinds of odd things out there. I still have some research videos, just odd things from time to time that I do throw out there. And if you hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button, then you'll be notified every time I have a new video that comes out. I'm pretty well back on track now, at least for the winter months, and probably have a video out every week, maybe an odd one thrown in extra every now and then as well. I have more time through the winter to be able to do this. This last summer just really held me up. So anyway, share all this content with friends out there. There's a lot of model railroaders out there that would like to know how to do some of this and don't know where to begin or what resources to use. I probably don't cover some of that as well as I probably should in this video. Sometimes I think things are just don't need to be said, and sometimes I'm pretty stupid, so a lot of things need to be said that maybe I'm not saying. So I do apologize. So if you have questions or anything, comment down below and I will definitely answer you or give you sources or something like that if I can. Some of the stuff I had, I've been doing this for 50 some years, and some of the stuff I have in my collection I'm scratch building with is old, and I don't even know if it's still available in the market, or maybe it is available but through a different source or something too. So sometimes you build things up over time and you use them when you can. And I fly by the seat of my pants on doing a lot of this stuff. So a lot of it's trial and error, but none of it's that hard. It's just time consuming, and you're going to make mistakes if you're scratch building, and you're going to have to backtrack and redo something or something like that every once in a while. And the more you do it, the less of that it will happen, and eventually you'll be able to build really complicated buildings and have very little in the way of problems come up during the process of building them. So anytime it is winter time, and weather's bad. I hope you're all dragging your trains out and playing with them and scratch building some buildings, even if it's just something quick and easy for scenery detail. Details are where the life is on a model railroad. The more details you have, the more lifelike it looks and the more realistic it feels when you're running your trains through them. So in any case, spend some time with your trains, and happy model railroading.